Hey folks, John from Complete Technology Solutions, your friend in the computer business. I'll bet you know what this pile of goodies is, huh? Let's dive right in and have some fun. Be right back. Okay folks, so we were tasked with building a computer. We're going to call this a mid-range gaming machine for somebody who wanted to run like PUBG, Fortnite, Apex, all those kind of games. But he didn't want to spend a whole lot of money on this, so we had a very tight budget to stick to. So we had to select very specific components to keep it under that price range, but still give him the performance he's going to need to play those games. So let me show you what I've elected to do. So what we're going to do is, and I'm going to make sure Stumpy's getting a view of this here, we went ahead and we went with a Ryzen 5 3600. This is actually a 6-core processor with 12 threads, and it is running at 4.2 gigahertz turboed. So this is actually a fantastic processor. I went ahead and I looked at the latest generation of Ryzen processors, and for the price comparison, this was the way to go based on the speed versus price. Add to the fact that this does already come with a decent cooling fan, so that's one thing we didn't have to add. So that's pretty cool. All right. Now, the motherboard I've elected to use on this is one that I've used on many, many builds. You guys have seen it 100 times on here. The Gigabyte. This is the Gigabyte A320. Fantastic board. I actually have installed these in quite a few systems, and I've never had one go bad. So, but it's got everything built onto it that we're going to need. Aside from Wi-Fi, we're going to add that on separately. And believe me, I've told him if he's going to be playing these games to avoid Wi-Fi if he possibly can, but we'll see if that happens. So, for our primary hard drive, and I did tell him, if you're building any kind of modern day computer, guys, your primary hard drive, it definitely either needs to be M.2 or solid state. No doubt about it. NVMe hard drives, you do not want a spinning drive. They're too slow. So he elected to go with a 240 gig solid state drive for the primary hard drive. He wasn't overly concerned about the speed or the storage capacity on the secondary drive. He just wanted to save the money. So generic old 1 terabyte drive. So nothing big. You know, normally on a build like this, I would put in at least a 4 or a 6 terabyte as the secondary drive for storage, but he just wanted something small to keep it economical, so that's what we did. For the RAM, now this is where we didn't cut the corners, because we were going to cut the corners on this, but he decided to go small hard drive to add the RAM. We're going to go with one stick of 16 gigabyte HyperX Fury. Fantastic RAM, so we're going to definitely go with that. Now, as most of you know, if you're building a low-end system, you can typically get away with using onboard graphics, particularly since a lot of the Ryzen processors have got Vega graphics built into them. But in this case, we want something with a little more punch. So we are going to go with the Radeon RX 580. Now this is the last generation once again. One of the best video cards ever. By the way, I still use these in my Bitcoin mines. And yes, for the jokers out there, I still do have a couple Bitcoin mines. They're fantastic. They're bulletproof and they just work all the time. And that's what you want out of one of these things. So, but for basic video card, for power, for gaming, it's great. All right. And we've got our power supply here. We went with a 600 watt. Now this is a semi-modular power supply. Now, for those of you who don't know what that means, whenever you get a power supply, the old days you'd get one big giant bundle of cables that would come out of the back and one plug to each one of the devices. That was non-modular, so you had to cable in a whole bunch of different cabling. A fully modular power supply means that you've got the brick, and on the back of it you've got a series of plugs on it to plug things into to get to each individual device. That way you're only using the cables that are necessary. On a semi-modular, the reason I went this route is because it's got one major plug, which is the power supply to the motherboard and the 8-pin to the board. Those are actually coming out of the supply, but then you've got the other pins that you can plug into to go to the devices. You save a little money going with the semi-modular for sure, over the 4-modular, and that's kind of the reason we went this one. We wanted to save the money on it. This does have RGB lighting on it, which was also a plus in this. So this is what we're using for this. And for our case, this is another case that I've actually used on a couple of business machines, and the reason I like it is airflow. We're going to be using the Cooler Master Q500L. And I know you probably can't see too much of this till we get it out of the case, but what's really cool about this, the entire front is perforated, and the front comes off. It's actually a magnetic screen that comes off to clean it. It's really, really nice. So, sit tight a second. I'm going to go ahead and get this unboxed. We'll take this one step at a time and get it put together. Here we go. All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and start with the motherboard and the CPU. We're going to get these mounted and get them ready to go. So cracking open this box, you'll see here you've got your I/O shield for the back of the case. Don't lose that. And you've got your cabling that goes to your SATA drive. So both of the hard drives, the solid state down there, will be connected with these cables. And digging in here, you've got your motherboard. And I believe, yep, there we go. You've got some pinouts on here. These will come in particularly handy if you're wiring up the front of the case for like a frontside USB or audio, which of course you will be. And you've got a gigabyte motherboard driver disk, which you won't be using, but you hang on to that anyway. All goes to the customer. All right, this wrapped up. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to mount this processor. Now, as you guys can see, I've got an anti-static mat here. This used to be a lot more important than it is these days, but still, we're going to work on the anti-static mat with the motherboard. All righty. And there she is. Nice looking board, right? And see, we could have gone with an M.2 here. That was an option. But once again, we were on a very tight budget on this thing, and he wanted to make absolutely sure we could fit in as much as possible under the dollar amount that he had quoted. Not to mention the fact what you're also not seeing here is I ended up getting as well as a monitor, a 22-inch monitor. So, and it did take a little searching, I can tell you that much. All right, let's get our processor out here. And I always like to hold on to all these Ryzen books and stuff like that because they're really kind of cool. And take out our fan. There we go. Now, this fan, unlike the Ryzen 7s, those actually have LEDs built into them. These are just the regular Wraith Spires, and they don't have those LEDs. But that's really not that big of a deal. That's just aesthetic. I'll go for performance over aesthetic all day long. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get this mounted up to this board, and we'll be right back with you. Hang tight. All right, guys, so as you can see, I now have the processor and the fan mounted on here. Now, this is the actual cable. Now, it doesn't matter which direction you mount this necessarily. You got the little AMD logo up here, but really you're going to be seeing it sideways if the case is on its side, so it doesn't really matter. What you do want to pay attention to is the length of this cable, and right here is your CPU fan connection, okay? So what I usually do is put one service loop in here just to kind of take up a little bit of that extra cabling, and then plug it in right here. All right, so that's taken care of now. All right, so now the motherboard is essentially prepped. We're going to go ahead and we're going to slap on the RAM since we're here anyway. 1 second here. Now, this is, there are 2 channels on this. You could have run 2 sticks. As it turns out, they were running a really good sale on this particular model of RAM, so we went this way with just 1 stick. And at the end of the day, that won't make much of a difference, except that there will be some upgradability in the future, which is a fantastic thing. All right, at this point, we're going to go ahead and crack the case open and get it started. If we had an M.2 hard drive, I would go ahead and mount the hard drive right there, right now, before we continue the rest. But we don't, so we're going to consider the motherboard ready to rock. Right back with you. All right, guys, so this is the Cooler Master case that we're going to be using. And as you can see, you still got all the pretty plastic on there. I'm actually going to try to leave that on there because you guys know the pleasure of kind of peeling off your own plastic on your new computer. So, but what I like about this is if you take this magnet off the front, you can see this is fully perforated up here. So you can run as many fans as you want to pull the air in, pull it up from the bottom, and then pull it out the top to keep this thing super, super ventilated. It's also real easy to clean that, so you don't have to blow it out. You can just pull it up and shoot it out. Same thing with the top. And same thing with the bottom. You got a filter on all 3 sides, which is really, really nice. We're going to go ahead and pull off the side here, give you a little tour on the inside. Once again, I'm going to try to maintain this plastic as best I can. Not always as easy as it seems. All right. One thing I also like about this is that the USB ports are actually mounted on the side over here, which is pretty cool. All right. And normally I would lay this on its side before I open this because it has a tendency to fall, so you want to be real careful with that. The idea is to kind of open it up like a swing door. See what I mean? And then there's the swing door that comes right off. All right, so we're going to set this aside over here. All right, so as you can see in here, very compact design, very small. Let me see if I can get Stumpy focused on it here. Basically, all of your hard drives, you're going to have one that's going to be mounted on the surface mount here, and then one of them will be mounted in the back side. Your motherboard will be sitting right here, and then your power supply will be sitting in there too. So let me show you what we got going. Hang tight. Okay guys, so one thing I want to show you, this is actually a Cooler Master, relatively new thing. We talked about where the power supply goes. As most of you can see, it doesn't look like there's a lot of room for power supply in here. Typically, they mount at the bottom of the case. But what Cooler Master has done, and I kind of think this is ingenious, the power supply is now mounted here. The air is pulled in through the front of the case and vented straight out the top. That's particularly interesting, and it was also part of the reason we went with this power supply, because this is LED lit, which means the front of the case will actually light up when this is on now. So let me mount this power supply in here. As you can see, there's a power cable right here. This is what plugs into the power supply, and then if you look at the back of the case, there's a small plug right there next to the I/O shield. That's where it plugs in. So basically from here to there is a small extension cable to extend to where the power supply will be sitting. Very, very important. All right, I'm going to mount this power supply and then we'll go forward from there. All right, guys, so I wanted to show you how this power supply is mounted in this new case. Now, this is the first time I've seen this design. When I've used this case in the past, there's actually been a slot at the bottom for the power supply. So as you can see, this is the bottom of the case down here on Stumpy. You can see down here at the bottom, okay? The power supply mounts inside the case now. This is the front of the case. So you can see it's going to be, the fan is going to be pulling air in from the front and blowing out through the top to cool the power supply. It's an interesting design. We'll have to see how well that works because, I mean, it seems to me like it's going to block a little bit of airflow. Then again, we can mount fans to the bottom if we wanted to, pulling air straight up. So we'll take a look at that and see too. But I wanted you guys to see that. So what I'm going to do now that we've got the power supply properly mounted, we're going to go ahead and mount the motherboard. So I'm going to mount that up. We'll be right back with you. Okay, guys, so as you can see, we now have the motherboard mounted. I got to tell you, I'm liking the way this is looking. This color scenario, this black and silver thing it's got going on is looking really, really sharp. So before I even turn the thing on, that's pretty awesome, I got to tell you. So, all right. So the next we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get all the cabling wired up for the front side USB, the front side audio, and we'll go ahead and get the all of the pins plugged in here for like the reset and the power on the front. So hang tight. We're going to get that set up. I'll be right back with you. All right, guys. So we've got our front side USB in, we've got our front side audio, and we've got all of our plugs connected up for the front. Now, I want to tell you guys, back in the old days, and a lot of you guys will remember this, these got a whole lot easier because back in the old days, they didn't used to label the motherboard where the power connector went, where the hard drive LED went, where the power LED went, all that stuff. You could look at the book and kind of suss it out if you were lucky. Otherwise, it was trial and error. But now, they make it pretty darn simple to look at that board and just plug it where it goes. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and get the hard drives mounted in their two positions. So I'll be right back with you and I'll show you where we're going to put those. All right, guys, so what I wanted to show you is if you open up the bottom of the case, well, in this case would be the back of the case that have these little rubber feet on it, okay? You're going to see that there are two doors, and these actually, if you unscrew these screws right here, they will hinge out. I'm going to show you that right now. Unscrew it, it'll hinge out, and then this door comes off. The idea is you can mount your hard drives completely invisible in the system, mounted to that plate. And as you can see right now, I've already got the solid-state drive mounted in place right now. So I'm going to mount the other hard drive right up here above it. So during this build, guys, one thing I wanted to show you that I ran into. On this particular case, and like I said, this is a redesign of an old case. I'd never had this problem before. But as you can see, this is the 1 terabyte hard drive we were talking about. And mounted on the shelf that comes with it, it actually extends a little bit beyond the threshold where the back of the case goes on, which means the back of the case is held out a tiny bit. And while that probably wouldn't be a problem, it wouldn't look right. So we're not going to mount this here. I'm thinking we're actually going to mount it to the inside of the case here. So let me get a look at this, and I'll show you where we're going to put it. Right back. All right, so as you can see, what I did is, since we've got these perforations in here, the holes lined up perfectly with the mounting screws on this, which makes me think they might have considered this in the past. So the primary hard drive will be mounted down here in the bottom, or excuse me, the secondary hard drive, whereas the primary hard drive will be mounted back here in the back. So here's what we're going to do, guys. Since we've got this all in here and everything's in now, I'm going to go ahead and get this cabled up, but not dressed properly, just kind of cabled in place so you can see where everything plugs in, and we'll be right back with you. All right, guys, so as you can see, we've got everything wired up in here nicely. It's not cabled yet, but we'll get to that here shortly. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and install this video card. All right. Now, I know a lot of you are familiar with the 580s. I've used a lot of them since they first came out. They're great, great mid-level cards. And even to today, they're still decent cards, especially for the price. All right, get this bad boy out of here. Boop. And for those who haven't seen the unboxing, we'll let you take a look at this. They're actually pretty impressive. All right, stop, driver information, yeah, all that good stuff. It'll go over here in the pile. And there is the card itself. We'll crack this thing out. It has never ceased to amaze me over the years, even when putting all these things in, how heavy these cards are. I mean, they are just amazingly heavy. And I'm sure that's all the heat sinks and cooling. Go ahead and take that off there. Now, I know I said we're going to let him peel all these off, but this is going in the system, so we want to get it all off there before we throw it in the case. There we go. Ooh, love that carbon fiber look. Oh, yeah. All right. And of course, a couple of cool things about this is, on top of the DVI output, which a lot of them don't even have DVIs anymore, you get your standard HDMI port as well as all your console ports. And those are display port adapters, what they call those. So you've got all your display ports also. So you can technically, theoretically, run 5 monitors off this. Obviously, that would just eat up your performance. You don't want to do that when you're gaming. 2 is just fine. All right, this would probably be power cables. All right. And that's it in that box. All right, so let's go ahead, let's get this mounted real quick. Pretty simple to mount, actually. You go ahead and pull out these 2 screws, and hopefully Stumpy's catching this. There we go. And this plate comes off. And then, now you want to find out where you're actually going to be hitting on these back plates. So, we'll go ahead and set the video card in place. And boy, let me tell you, that consumes a majority of the inside of this case. All right, so we're going to eat those 2 ports right there. So the second and third one have to come out. And here. And the third one. All right. Pop those out of there. Get our card in place. And the reason, this is part of the reason I didn't cable first, guys. I wanted to see how much room I was going to have left once I mounted this card to actually do some creative cabling in here. Ah, great sound. Sliding right into place. All right, let's go ahead and get these on. Get this one on. Now, if you'll remember, we talked about the modular power supplies. The reason this is a good thing is right now, this is going to require more power than a standard video card. It actually has I believe, an 8-pin connector on these. Some of them have 4 pins. Some of them I've seen with 16 pins. And those take a lot of juice, but we're not in that area yet. So, all right. Put that back together. And this one. And now our video card is mounted and ready to rock. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and plug in the modular power cable that I was telling you about. Now, you'll notice in the kit, it actually comes with an adapter to take 2 connectors up to the 1 8-pin that it needs. That is assuming your power supply doesn't already have the 8-pin connector, which this one does. So I'm going to get this all wired up. Tell you what, guys, I'm going to get it cabled up inside here, get this plugged in, and then we'll turn it on for the first time together. Hang tight. All right, guys, so as you can see, we've got it all cabled up. I will tell you, there were a couple of small cable challenges with this because there's not a lot of room to conceal and there's a lot of cabling inside there. So, but as you can see, it turned out very, very, very nice. We've got nothing obstructing anything, good airflow. We shouldn't have any problems at all with this. So let me flip it around here and show you the back with Stumpy. And as you can see on the back, this is our solid state drive right here, along with its cabling strapped down too. So we should be good there. All right, I'm going to reassemble the side of the case, and then we're going to fire this thing up together. All right, guys, so let's give it a try. We're going to fire it up our first try. Looks like we got fans. Looks like we got lights on everything that needs lights. I can't see up in the front there, so you guys got to tell me what you're seeing out there. And let's see if we can get my TV to come on now. Now, I've got a little generic USB keyboard mouse combo. These things are really good for just setting up systems. I have a real bad habit of leaving my wireless dongles in these things and they end up going out and I end up having to buy another setup. So now I use these little generic jobs. And there we go. We are in the BIOS. All right. Looks like a standard gigabyte BIOS. Now this has changed a little bit since the last time I saw it. Let's see here. We should be reading all of our RAM. Let's go ahead and check and make sure we're good there. And we are set at 2667 megahertz. That is correct for the RAM. All right. Looking like all's good there. BIOS version. Now the BIOS date on this is from 11/28/19, but these can actually be remotely updated. So we may do that, we may not. It's not necessarily something we have to do right away. So, all right. So we got that's all good. Peripherals. Let's see. We got the USB configuration. We got that enabled. That's fine. All right. And it is seeing, as you can see, it's seeing both of our hard drives here. And I know Stumpy is actually staring at the side here. It is actually seeing both hard drives. It's got the primary is the 240 and the secondary is the 1 terabyte. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to save this and exit. Now, we're not going to do any overclocking or anything with this. If the end user decides he wants to at some point, he's certainly welcome to. But that's not something I ever like to get into with these mid-level boards like this. So, especially with AMD processors, if you're running the standard cooling, you want to run some advanced cooling. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and reboot this thing, and we're going to get Windows started on it. All right, guys. So as you can see, we've got Windows loading on here now. Actually just going through the first initial setups right now. And I am absolutely not going to bore you guys with the Windows setup on this thing. I'm sure all of you have seen this about 100 million times, so we'll save that. I did see the lights. Those actually look pretty cool up there, don't they? Yeah, and that's actually, it's weird to me to think that that's not a fan, but that's actually the power supply that's displaying those lights. And you can feel a good flow of air coming on this thing, both from the CPU fan, out the back, and straight up. This has actually got a real nice cool airflow in here. So I don't think we're going to have a problem with that. Well, thank you guys for watching. Once again, basic mid-level PC design, fantastic equipment. You can build this yourself. If you really want to do it, just do it. It's not rocket science. Thank you so much for watching. Listen, if you're out there in the world, we all know right now that coronavirus thing is going on. Stay safe, guys. Real simple precautions. Keep your hands washed, all that stuff. I won't go over the garbage, but just be safe. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. I'll see you on the next video. Got something big again. We'll see you in a little bit. Have a good one.